So let's just recap some concepts. Start tayo with the definition. Definition of statistics. Since this is basically a review course, just paano ba ginagawa sa software? How do we do basic statistical analysis, descriptive stat using software? We start with the definition. How do we define statistics? Textbook definition. Anyone?
Sir, may I just read from the from the line? All right. Statistics is the practice or science of collecting and analyzing numerical data in large quantities, especially for the purpose of inferring proportions in a whole from those in a representative sample.
Okay. So basically the first part of that definition, collecting and analyzing, right? So I have received an answer here, organizing data. If you're using yung kilala niyo naman si Nasser Froome na, di ba? So they have a book, yung statistical literacy. Yan, ang kanilang definition is statistics is the science of collecting, organizing, summarizing, and analyzing data. So I'm always using that whenever I'm starting statistics course because it actually captures all chapters that we're gonna discuss, and it all starts with collecting data. Even your definition from the internet starts with collecting data, right? So it's a science dealing with data, to put it concisely. So we can't start doing statistics without data. And to start, we have to collect data. So ano ba sources ng data? Primarily, we classify two sources of data, primary and secondary. But from those from primary, whether it's primary or secondary, where do you get data from, or what procedures do you use to get data? Sige, you did have practice from diba, from SHS or maybe some other research subjects from high school. Paano kayo kumuha ng data?
Surveys or experiments.
Okay, survey or experiments. So, ano ginawa nyo? Particularly ikaw, kung sino mang sumasagot. Kwentuhan session muna. Oh, ano?
Sir, sa survey po, nag-distribute po kami ng questionnaires.
Survey ng questionnaire. So, yes. Pwede mo ikwento, describe mo, ano ba yung tinatanong nyo? Ano ba yung question sa questionnaire? Kung okay lang.
Sir, kasi po noong grade 12, nag-survey po kami. Yung research po namin is about yung sa pagtanggal na Filipino as GE, Filipino subject as general edu sa college. Mm-hmm. Then, yung questionnaire po parang nag-a-ask siya if gaano na po ka-familiar yung yung students, first year college students sa Filipino, like sa literature, sa mismong language, ganun po. Tapos parang may in-adopt po kami na questionnaire din from previous research. Then, minodify po namin. Tapos, dun po, like paano lang po siya. Gumamit po kami ng scale na I forgot po kami, pero yung 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yung 1, 2, 3, Likert scale.
Yung po, Likert scale.
Okay.
From disability to agree.
Sige, so yun, thank you. Any other examples? Ano ba mga pinagagawa nyo nung high school?
Excuse me?
Yeah?
Sampling.
What precisely? Can you tell me a story? How did you conduct your research? What was the objective? How did you collect data?
I didn't do something like that before sa senior high school kasi I was in international school, American international school sa Indonesia.
All right, sige. So, the others, do you have any instances where you did any type of research?
Sure. Experimental po.
Experimental yun sa'yo? Okay.
Opo. Wait. Kuwento pa ba? Or...
Sige, kwento mo.
Basically, we had to, this is for grade 12, and then the topic assigned for us was EEC, electrical engineering thingamajiggies. And then we had to make a power generator. Yeah. Through pedal motion using a bike.
Pedal motion. Okay.
Yeah. And then we had to like test several times for like, to get the and you have to get the means of the thing so that your data is accurate. To test whether your generator is actually working and how it compares to an actual generator that you can buy online.
Comparison with commercially available generator.
I guess, yeah.
Okay. So what type of data yung kinuha nyo from the experiment? Ano ulit?
Experimental? Oh, wait.
Of course, experiments, you're gonna have a variable to manipulate. You're gonna look for some response, di ba?
Sorry. It's been quite a while. I don't remember.
Alright, sige. And sige, the rest, meron pa kayong gustong i-share na ano? Wala na may gusto. Okay, so basically surveys and experiments, what I got from you, they are basically sources of data, and you can do it primarily, meaning you're gonna be the one to conduct the survey, you're gonna be the one to conduct the experiment, or the source can be secondary. By secondary, I mean you're getting data from the internet gathered by some other researchers. I just want to put it into context. The way I'll discuss this is in the context of research, kasi paano ko ba sabihin to? The data that we have, the reason why we're collecting data is we want to answer some objective, right? So we start with an objective, and then that's where that's how we proceed with creating our instrument or designing our experiment, right? So it all starts with collecting data. So what I want to emphasize today is using a survey as an example. So I've asked you a few questions. You're already familiar with the next topics. It's gonna be creating graphs, creating tables, doing t-tests, chi-square test, ANOVA, and so on. It's gonna be that. But before you do everything, before you do every next topic, we start with collecting data, and the next is to manage it. How do we encode it properly? How do we present data in such a way that it's clean, yung computer kaya siya intindihin? Paano siya ipapresent in such a way that all variables are uniformly measured? So alright. So ano yung sabihin ko dito? This particular dataset kasi, I've gathered this dataset from you, you're the respondents, using a survey questionnaire. So this dataset, hindi tayo pwedeng gumawa agad ng mga t-test dyan, ng mga bar graph pie chart, because first it has to go through data cleaning. So what's data cleaning? If you're gonna work as a statistician, maybe kung freelance man yan or someone employs you, you're gonna deal with data cleaning a lot more than yung mga actual analysis, to be honest. So yun, maybe yun kasi just from experience, I've been asked to assist some doctors. May mga doctors na lumalapit sa akin, helping them with their research. Some undergrad students as well. So yun, the truth is parang hindi sila ganun kasanay na mag-encode ng data. Kailangan munang linisin. You have to clean them first. So ano ba yung lilinisin na ibig sabihin ko? Suppose ito, height. So height, you want to, let's say, create a distribution table. How many are 5'3", how many are 5'7", how many are 5'1". But since it wasn't specified, sinadya ko yan, it wasn't specified what unit are we using, iba-iba siya. So we cannot readily make that that graph, at least that graph. You want to analyze what's the difference between the heights of males and females. That's another objective, simple objective. You cannot do it readily because the computer doesn't understand that 5'3" is 63, 63 inches, 5'7" is 67 inches, and so on. So you have to do data cleaning first. So we started with data set as small as this so that you can see how you can do it manually. As we go further, we'll deal with larger data sets. We have to clean them. With some sort of automation. Pero dito, at least for now, we do it by hand or we do it manually. So how do we make this uniform? Let's say I want to make it, express it in centimeters na lang. So how? So this will be 63 inches. This is how I would go about it. 63 inches, 67 inches, 61 inches, 63. 511 is 71. This is 63.5, 67, 60, 165 na yan, 170, 160, 65 inches, 69 inches. And this is really boring, ha? Really boring gawin yung first part. And to be honest, dahil hindi siya ganun na-discuss, hindi siya common sense agad na kailangan mo linisin yung dataset. So, kaya rin natin dinadaanan yung boring part today. So ito is 70, 65, 165 na yan, 61 is ilan ba yun? 73 inches, 57 is 67. Bakit ko ginagawa yan? Kasi gusto ko, I want to use the 2.54 conversion. So 2.54 times height in inches, that's gonna be centimeters. And along the way, if you're, wait lang, tanong ko pala sa inyo, are you familiar with Excel? How familiar are you with Excel?
I used it before in STT201, and it's pretty convenient naman.
So the rest, are you familiar with Excel functions? Maybe pivot tables, familiar kayo dun sa mga yun?
They used to teach Excel even in junior high, but I've forgotten most of the shortcuts.
So the others?
I learned it again for work.
Nag-work ka ngayon, parang ganun.
And just like a small internship.
So actually, you'll do a lot of Excel from work. Actually, kinonsult ko yung mga friends ko from corporate. Nag-Excel ba kayo every day? Every day daw. And actually, I did an internship as well back when I was in college. Yun, puro Excel talaga. Doon ko natutunan halos lahat ng Excel na alam ko ngayon. But basics lang tayo. So like something like this, I'm inputting some formula. Let's do it slowly na lang pala para everyone can follow. So I converted it manually from 5'3" feet and inches to inches. But the goal is just to express everything in centimeters. Okay, so the next is, I know that the conversion factor is 2.54 centimeters per inch. And that formula, you can actually drag it, yung right side, lower right corner of the cell. You can just drag it down. And the formula is followed. So let's say this cell is going to be 2.54 times 67. So 154.94 times 61. 2.54 times 61. 2.54 times 63. 2.54 times 71. So yun siya. Ito copy ko na lang 165, 170, 160, 160, 165.
Excuse me. So when it comes to data cleaning, we're just making the units consistent like you did, right? Because there were people who gave it in inches. There were people who gave it in centimeters. So in other words, metric and the English system, right? So we're making it consistent with the metric system, right?
Yeah. So that's one of the problems you can encounter kasi. But later on, I'll present you with some other problems you may encounter. All right? Some other problems you may encounter before you proceed with statistical analysis. Proceed with creating graphs, charts, and so on. So, all right. So that's one problem. They're not expressed as in one unit. So here it is. It's expressed in centimeters. What if I want to round them off to the nearest integer? So we can do something like this. So there's a function in Excel called round. Sige na, another column na naman. So another function called round. It's rounding off. By round off, I mean, let's say 160.4 becomes 160, 160.5 becomes 161. Diba? Those are the rules for rounding off. Say, Javi.
Could you also do, there's this on the top, there's decreased decimal places and increased decimal places. Could you do that as well?
All right. So that's a good question. You can do that as well, but Excel won't recognize them as integers. They're still recognized as 160.02, 170.08, 170.18, something like this, right? But if you look at the value of the cell, let's say this cell will be equal to the cell on the right, 170.18 pa rin yan. It's not gonna be 170. It's not the value being stored. So that's why I'm doing this, huh? So that's why I'm still doing rounding off. So yun, basically the round function is you input the number to be rounded off and then you put the number of digits or the decimal places. So it's 0, 160 siya. We just drag it down since we're performing the same operation. Then we have this data set clean, already clean from the initial form, its initial form. So what I want to do, if I want to store this as a value, is just to copy it, paste it on the same cells, paste them as values. Why do I need to do that? Medyo kaartehan ko lang, but they are stored as formulas kasi. So I want to store them as values. So instead of round, it becomes 160, 170, and so on. So all right, so that's problem you can encounter. And one quick way to fix this is just specify in your questionnaire, you want to express them in centimeters, right? So it's a lesson not only in data cleaning, but also in preparing questionnaires. Specify what you want to get. So height in centimeters, more likely you'll get a cleaner data set. So now okay na to, ah. All three columns fixed na. What about this next column? Favorite show, TV series, anime, or any TV show. So this type of question, what can we say about this question, man? Wait lang. Okay. So it provides a lot of responses. So if you're being asked your favorite show, you're expecting different responses. So The Good Place, How Many Highs, and so on. And then here, meron pang naglagay ng multiple shows, meron naglagay ng novel, may naglagay ng no favorite show. So yeah, you're gonna expect answers like that. So imagine you want to create a summary. How would you wait lang. Favorite show, Doraemon. Saya naman yung Doraemon, ah. Favorite ko rin ng bata ako yun, eh. Okay, so ayan, you're gonna expect a lot of different answers dito. And kaya nga siya naka-anonymous para hindi nyo malaman kung sino. Para most likely tama yung isagot. Ayan, so you're gonna expect a lot of responses here. So for this cell, let's leave it at that. Kung anong answer ninyo, yan siya. So let's say another objective is you want to know what genre do the STT203 students generally prefer. So what do you have to do? You're gonna have to put another column, genre, where you would manually search for what genre they belong to. And it's kind of hard kasi some shows belong to different genre naman, di ba? So, yeah. That's it for but another quick fix for it is just ask what genre do you usually prefer, right? So yun, all right, we're done with letter D. Letter E, it's a categorical variable, simple, and it's clean. Adobo or sinigang only. When do you work best? It's night, midday, or morning. Again, it's clean na naman. So these are questions that whatever we expect, yun talaga yung lumabas. So these are three categories. A categorical question, number of siblings. And I don't know if this is clear, but I'm asking for the number of siblings, not including you. So not the number of children, hindi kung ilan kayong magkakapatid, but rather how many siblings you have. So let's just assume that this is all correct. And we have to assume kasi hindi mo naman pwede balikan yung mga respondents mo, right? Ay, mali pala ako. Mali pala yung tanong ko. Ilan pala yung kapatid mo? So we can't go back. And then lastly, Stat 101 row grade. Yan. So I'm expecting this as well. I've specified that it should be in the form of 95 instead of 4.0, and it's just an estimate. But yeah, you have some other answers right here, which is of course this is correct kasi answers nyo naman yan, di ba? So merong naglalagay ng question mark, so you have to clean it as well because Excel, your computer will not read them as numbers but rather characters. 92 question mark. So 92. So the rest of the answers, how do we treat them? So ito pwede na ko nang gawing 91. How do we treat them? So these responses, we can just delete them kasi we cannot actually incorporate them in the analysis. So NA, 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 yeah, NA. Ito forgot. I can treat it as NA as well. So that's data cleaning. That's the first part you need to do before analyzing data. Expected naman na yung gagawin natin is just create graphs, do t-test, and so on. And we're gonna do it 3 times using Excel, using R, using SAS. Okay? So ganun lang si STT203A. So maliwanag tayo dito ha. So I hope get siya na it's important to for your survey instrument, or basically from the data collection stage, you're supposed to structure your data collection mechanism, either experiment man yan or survey, in such a way that clean data will be obtained. So yun nga, pwede kong nilagay na in CM dapat yan and so on. So alright. So generally, data structure for spreadsheets, which I think most of you are familiar naman, when you're doing survey, sino ba to si anong pangalan mo? Miss Lugtu, kanina may survey ka, di ba? Anong ginamit niyong pang survey? So paano niyo in-administer?
Sir, nagbigay po talaga kami ng physical
papel.
copies. Yes,
tapos,
in-encode
nyo?
Opo.
So paano nag-encode ng data?
Sir, gumamit kami ng SPSS po that time.
SPSS, okay. Pero basically, spreadsheet pa rin naman yun, di ba? And what's common with every spreadsheet application is that each particular column will correspond to a variable. So a variable or a question, and each row will correspond to a response. So yun, common naman siya. And if like siya you physically administered a survey, when you're gonna encode the data, it should be done using that structure. Each column is one question, each row is a response. Alright? Sige, saan na tayo? Wait lang. Masyado ata akong mabilis. So yan na si intro to Excel data management. Yun lang naman siya. At least for now ha. But yun, just to set yung expectations niyo, makita nyo kung ano yung gagawin pa natin next meetings. Imagine using a much larger data set. How can we possibly clean that data? Imagine 1 million responses. Maunti pa nga yun eh. If you've heard the terms na big data and so on, mga petabytes of data yung ina-analyze na nila ngayon eh. So that's billions of responses and billions of variables, right? So how do we clean data? Hindi naman that big, but let's say mga 1,000 or 5,000 responses. How do we do that? And yung mga next meetings natin ha. Today basics lang. So tapos na tayo sa collecting. Maliwanag na after collecting, it should be cleaned. It should be processed so that the computer or any app we're gonna use, it's gonna recognize yung mga answers, yung mga responses. So moving on, ano bang next topic? Tabular and graphical presentation of data. So tabular and graphical presentation. Basically kasi paano ba sabihin to? Data presentation, we can classify it with as presentation for qualitative, presentation for quantitative variables. Sige nga, ano yung pinagkaiba ng dalawa? What's the difference between qualitative and quantitative? Or any examples? Sige, have you ulit.
So qualitative data is categorical. For example, you have your favorite TV show. You have your cell phone number, your car plate number. Quantitative, on the other hand, is measurable. Like say your height in centimeters, number of siblings.
Height in cm, number of siblings. Okay. So that's correct. So qualitative, categorical, quantitative, measurable. All right. And yung ways to present data natin, it's gonna be divided. I want to discuss it divided into quantitative, qualitative. So first, how do we present data in tabular form? The most common tabular form ng pag-present ng data is using frequency distribution tables, FDTs. Yan, babalik tayo dito. Then we're gonna do it on a larger scale pagdating sa R and SAS. So FDT. What's an FDT? FDT, as the name suggests, it's a frequency distribution table. It summarizes the frequencies of distinct responses. So let's say our variable dito sex, it's a categorical variable, qualitative. Let's create an FDT for sex. So it's gonna be frequency. Yan, ito yung basic elements. So pwedeng male, pwedeng female. We count the distinct responses. Sino dito yung nag-excel sa trabaho? Pag ganyan, anong ginagamit ninyo? Familiar ka sa pivot tables? Hello?
I sent.
Ay, okay. Familiar ka sa pivot tables?
Hello, sir.
Hello? Yeah?
Hello.
Hello? We can hear you.
Wait, you're a bit choppy for me. Pivot tables?
Yeah.
Is that in the matrix theory?
Ay, okay. Sige na nga, masyado pala akong sige, let's forget it. So basically, pivot tables kasi, I'm not really familiar with pivot tables, but pivot tables are not really familiar, but they can be used to summarize frequencies. So wait lang, ulitin natin. So intro lang sa pivot tables. Di ba they were discussing FDTs? It's one way to make FDTs. So insert pivot table, and then we select this data set. It automatically selected the data set that we have. So all right, so we have this. So you want to summarize sex, and so it automatically created the row labels, either female or male, and then you just drag this down to the values. Yan. So it makes the frequency distribution table, FDT, automatically. So that's for Excel. I'm not really very familiar with pivot tables, but this is one of its functions, creating FDTs. So how do we create FDTs pa talaga? We're gonna manually manually count ilan yung males, ilan yung females. So in Excel, we can automate it using pivot tables. Apparently, there are 9 females. So fill up na natin, and 11 males. So of course, we have to provide the total. It's gonna be 20. Sige, gawin nating sum. So sum function, we have the sum function. Yan. Sum of these responses 20. You can also present yung percent frequency nila. So percent frequency, basically what part of the whole is composed by male. So 11 out of 20, 55. And then we can just drag it down, copy lang. So 55%, 45%. We can express them as percentages. So that's it. So actually, kailangan sum nila is 100%, of course. 100%. Of course, with Excel, you can always format it. Iwan ko na sa inyo yung mga formatting, ha? Alright. So on the other hand, what about quantitative variables such as height? How do we present it in tabular form? So using pivot tables, pivot tables, isa pa ulit, pivot. You want height. Bakit sum? Wait lang ha. We want to get the counts of height, diba? So instead of sums, we get count. So yan, this will be our FDT. One of you is 152 centimeters tall, one of you is 155, four of you are 160 exactly, 161 isa, and so on. So when you're presenting data, we're at this part na, the presentation of data. We want to present data in such a way that it's easy to read. What do we mean easy to read? Just one glance at your data presentation and you know whatever information is being portrayed. So dito you want to show the distribution of heights. So dito ba kita niya, maganda ba yan? May kung kayo ang audience, present ko yung data ko na ganito. Make sense? Make sense naman kasi konti lang yun. No? Konti lang yung, we just have a few responses. You're just 20 students who answered the survey. But imagine, let's say, age of all Filipinos. Meron kang zero, wala pang 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, and so on, di ba? So it's kind of tedious to read that table. So the least that we can do is to make intervals, divide them into intervals. So that's the difference between FDTs for qualitative, FDTs for quantitative. Whereas qualitative, you want to enumerate distinct responses. For quantitative data, you want to shorten them into intervals or classify them into intervals. So age, frequency, yan din yung basic na elements. Okay, so how do we categorize age? Or height pala tayo ngayon. So how do we categorize height? Actually, it's up to you. It's up to you how to categorize height. We can categorize them as maybe, ano ba? Ano bang hindi dito? Average, tall, or very tall. Para walang short. So you can do it in this way. Very tall. Or you can do, tawag doon? Intervals, or equally sized intervals. Let's say size 5, so 150 to 154. 155 to 159, 160 to 164, 165 to 169. And manual muna tayo ngayon, ha? 174, 175 to...
And frequency.
Ha?
Sorry, I was just noting it. I forgot to mute my mic. Sorry.
Sige. So sino man tallest sa inyo, kailangan pasok siya. Ito si 178. Siya na, ay, may 185 pala, my God. Sige, hindi ka kailangan kasama siya. 180 to 184, 185 to 1989. Okay. So you can do it this way, equally sized intervals. Actually, many ways to do it. Alright, this is just one. But, and we have to ask ourselves, is it really cleaner than this? Parang hindi rin, di ba? So baka mas maiging pa laki natin yung intervals. 150 to 159, 160 to 169. Size 10 naman siya. 170 to 179, 180 to 189. So I think this is much cleaner. It gives you an idea of the distribution of heights. And then unfortunately for Excel, we have to count them manually for now. And madali lang naman. So one thing that we can do is sort them out, sort them by height. Sige, bagal-bagalan natin. May sort function dito. Sort them from smallest to largest. Sort. So yan. Mas madali bilangin. It's easier to count them. So 150 to 159, dalawa. 160 to 169. How many? You can see dun sa lower right ng screen. Count is 9. 9. 170 to 179, it's gonna be 7. Then 180 to 189, there are 2 individuals. So for a total of, kailangan 20 ulit. Okay. Sige, baka may magtanong, may questions ba so far? So we're done with tabular presentation. Of course, you can always add percent frequency. It's up to you. It's a matter of preference naman. Hindi naman siya strict. Dapat may percent. It varies din sa context nung pagpe-present nyo ng data. Let's say you're dealing with millions. Millions lahat yung mga yan. I think it's better to present them in percentages instead of millions yung frequencies, diba? At least that's my opinion. But it actually varies from person to person. So kayo bahala. Alam lang natin, pwede siya i-express as percentages, pwede i-express as raw frequencies. 2 over 20 and so on. So percent. Ayan. So we have these percentages, kailangan sum niya ay 100 din. Since sum yung formula sa left, copy ko na lang. Lagay ko sa right niya, 100% din yung lalabas. Ayun, sum din. Sum of the 4 cells above it. Percent. So, baka may magtanong, nung high school kami, meron pa mga class boundaries, meron pang mga class marks, cumulative frequencies. You can do them as well. You shouldn't be trapped na nung high school may ganun, dapat laging may ganun. Kung ano lang kailangan naman, 'di ba? So all right, FDT is basically summary of the frequencies. From this table, we already know most of the students are in the middle. There are there are 2 who are from 150 to 159, 2 which are from 180 to 189. So roughly we know the distribution of heights. Medyo bell curve yung itsura, right? Rear yung nasa smaller side. Most of you are in the middle part, and then rare or some of you, konti lang, nasa taller side. Which we cannot readily see when the data is not arranged, di ba? Kapag hindi siya naka-arrange, kapag napakarami niya nakalista, magulo. Hindi ko alam kung ilan yung matangkad, ilan yung medyo maliit, ilan yung nasa gitna. So question so far, wala naman?
None, sir.
Wala, none daw pala. Kala ko meron. Sige, next. How do we present data in naman? So clear pala ha, ito ay for quali, for quanti. Divide them into intervals. Next, how do we present data using charts, graphs? What different charts can we use? How do we use Excel? So let's take the univariate case. When we say univariate, one variable. Let's look at one variable. Let's say sex. I want to summarize sex using a graph. So usual naman dyan, actually Google Forms, they already have some preset na mga charts. Ayan, no? May pie chart ka, may bar graph ka. Ayun, medyo hindi lang siya, since this is automated, it doesn't really, tawag doon? Doesn't really categorize height. Hindi niya kaya i-categorize si height. Kasi iba-iba yung responses nyo. You have different responses, different units, and also different heights. Google Sheets, Google Forms doesn't categorize them yet. So nasa sa inyo yung pag-categorize. So for qualitative data such as sex, kita naman natin doon, pie charts and bar graphs are preferred. So pie charts, so yung charts naman sa Excel, dito lang siya insert, so chart, and so. Ayaw niya nga pala ng ganun. So yan, pinakita ko lang din sa inyo. Excel doesn't want this, doesn't want the raw data. Excel wants the summarized data. So this one. So you have to summarize them first before creating a pie chart using this function. So FDT muna. Basically, it's a graphical FDT lang naman, di ba, yung pie chart, which shows that most of you, or about half of you naman, are males, half are females, about. Pangit. Yan. So, alright. So, pie chart, pwede. We can also do bar charts. So, data should be presented this way as well. Ano ba? Ito yung bar charts. Pili na lang kayo dyan. Yan, bar charts. Pwede rin. And for height, ayun lang. So, ox na, yun for qualitative, pie chart and bar chart. What about for quantitative variables such as height? Again, pag tinignan natin, pinilit siya ni Google Forms, ginawa siyang bar chart, and it looks messy. Ang daming 1 lang yung sagot, di ba? There are many responses which account for frequency 1 lang. How do we fix this? Again, we categorize, and it's automatically done by Excel using the so-called histograms. So histograms, just so you're familiar, height naman, yung itong height or itong raw data yung ina-accept niya. So highlight the raw data, insert, and then this one, histogram. So, here. So you have histograms right here. This is a histogram, basically a bar chart for categorized numerical variables. Bakit ganun? Hindi naman tulad yung hindi tulad yung FDT ko and my histogram. Cause our FDT, we defined it ourselves, right? We defined it in such a way na 10 yung size ng interval. So this one, we can actually customize it as well. So nandito naman. So access options, pwedeng ganyan. You specify bin width, that's the size of the interval, 10. Ayun, so sa kanya 152 to 162, 162 to 172, 172 to 182. So ganun naman yung nangyari. So ano pa bang pwede dito? And it's up to you to customize na lang. Number of bins, I want, bins are intervals. Let's say 5, I want to divide into 5 intervals. Equally sized intervals. Automatically ginagawa ni Excel. So that's the histogram. And it shows us the distribution of heights. Again, majority are in the middle. Merong onting nasa left, may onting nasa right. Sige, sama-sama natin lahat dito. Ay, wag na pala. Masyadong malaking space. So, alright, so that's how you present quantitative variables. So what about for some other specific objectives? Let's say I want to compare heights of males and females. So when comparing heights of males and females, we can actually do sige, try natin to. Hindi, ayoko niyan. We can actually do box plots naman. So what are box plots? Wait, nasan si box plots din? So box plots are, familiar pa ba sa box plots? Tanong muna. Alam niyo kung itsura nun? Anong sinasabi nun? Box and whisker. So ito yung box plot. Ayan. So it shows us many characteristics about heights of males and females. So we just want to clean this kasi of course we don't have to start with 0. Wala namang 0 centimeters yung height, di ba? So access options, you can explore it on your own din naman, but we're just presenting the basic. So let's say 150 minimum. So it looks a lot cleaner this way. So what does the box plot tell us? So the box plot tells us that The middle of the box plot kasi it's the median height for females. Yung sa males, wala nga nakalagay. Siguro yung median, it's very close with the other lines. But yeah, the middle is the median, the one marked X, if you can see. May nakamark na X, it's the mean. So it's the average height for males, average height for females. So what about the whiskers part? So the whiskers part, they are minimum and maximum. Minimum height for females, or the lowest height recorded. Minimum height for, maximum height for females, minimum height for males, maximum height for males. So just given this plot, ano mga pwede nating ma-observe? Can you list out? Besides the fact that males are generally taller than females in this class, any other observations?
Skewed.
Skewed alin?
It's skewed to the females, it's skewed to the right.
Skewed to the right. Okay, yung iba, ano pang ano nyo? Observations.
Oh, sorry, I meant skewed to the left.
Okay, skewed to the left. So, mamaya natin discuss yung mga skewed na yan, but that's right, skewed to the left. So any other observations? Ay, matanggal ng title. Okay pa ba?
Sir, yung max ng female, minimum ng male.
Yun, no? Max ng females, minimum ng males. Ano pa? Meron pa?
Sir, the range of the heights for males is larger than the range for the females.
Yeah, so much more varied. Males' heights are much more varied than females. So yun na lang siguro, putulin na natin doon. But it's a lot of information for just one plot. So it shows you that actually medyo biased ako dito. Favorite type of plot ko itong box plot. Favorite ko na siya kasi skewness, variation, as well as central tendencies, summarized niya. Alright? Actually, if you have some outliers, outlying observations, let's say I have someone here na male pero 6'7" siya, 201 centimeters. Tignan natin female. 6'7" na female. So gawa tayo ng box plot. Wait lang, asan eh? Recommended charts, all charts, box plot. Sige, wait lang options. Gusto ko 150 yung minimum. Yan. So it's actually gonna plot that observation, the 6'7" female, 6'7" female right here. It's an outlier. So box plots are also tools for identifying or visualizing outliers. So right, yun. So marami siyang pwedeng gawin. Comparisons, pwede rin siya gawin univariate. By univariate, I mean isa lang, for males lang kunwari. So height lang siya. But it can be used for comparison as well. It summarizes central tendency, variation, skewness, and so on. Also used for outliers, for presenting outliers. So okay na, ano mga nagawa natin? Pie chart, bar chart, histograms, ano pa yan? Box plots. Okay? So box plots are especially useful for comparison.
Excuse me.
Yeah?
I tried doing what you did on the screen for box plot, but it seems to me that it's not working when I highlight the number of siblings column and then I do
Sige, try natin
a box twister. There it is.
Sige.
There it is.
The problem lang with number of siblings is it's the responses are quite small. What do you mean by that? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lang yung possible responses, niya. So it's better to treat them not as numbers but rather categories. We can treat them as such. That's why I used height kasi much more varied yung mga responses and much larger yung range from 152 to 185.
Could we use grades? The raw grade?
Sure, you can use the raw grade as well. But basically it's for summarizing quantitative variables kasi alin lang ba yung may median? Quantitative lang, di ba? Mean, alin yung may variance, quantitative lang. Or summarizing quantitative variables or different categories of quantitative variables, just like what we did. So, okay na. Pie chart, bar chart, box plots, tsaka ano yun, histogram. So, isa pa. Ano naman tayo next? Scatter plots. Have you encountered scatter plots? So, scatter plots, they are, it's a tool for summarizing the relationship or visualizing the relationship of two quantitative variables. So we have two right here, height and stat101 grade. So tingnan natin, is there a relationship between height and stat101 grade? Mas matangkad ba? Mas mataas grade? Are the short, if you're shorter, do you have higher grades? Or is it completely random, completely unrelated? So a scatter plot gives us an idea if there's a relationship. So here, so we have this scatter plot. Again, it's quite messy or quite pangit kasi it starts from 0. Wala namang 0 yung grade. Wait lang, ano ba to? Grade, height. Height pala to. Height yung x. So, gawin natin ano bang bounds niya? Minimum is 150, maximum is 190. Okay. For stat101 grade, wala naman naka-0 sa inyo. Totoo nga, mga 80 pa taas eh. 80 to 100, let's say. Looks better that way, right? So, all right. So, given this scatter plot, so each point corresponds to a certain person. The x-coordinate of the point is gonna be the height. The y-coordinate of the point is gonna be the stat101 grade. Oh may, naka 100 nga pala, no? Si 165, 100. Okay. So, question, meron bang relationship? Is there a relationship between, do you see any relationship? Are they related? Mas mataangkad ba, mas mataas grade? Or mas maliit ba, mas mataas grade? Or is it completely random, no relationship?
Parang no relationship, sir. Although there's a bit of a line, but...
So, okay. So, parang may line, parang no relationship. Point is, it helps you. It helps you decide. It helps you discern if there's a relationship or not. Whether there is actually a relationship or not, it's one question that we're gonna answer next time. Using yung mga Pearson's correlation, regression. Yeah, that's for next time. But this scatter plot data visualization pa lang tayo, it helps us discern is there a relationship or not. So mukhang wala, mukhang meron, I don't actually know as well. Okay, so yun, scatter plots. Ano pa ba maganda dito? Yun na lang. Okay na yun. Tapos na yun. Yun na yung 1.3 natin. Mga basic na mga presentations naman siya. So sabi sa inyo, matatapos natin. 1.4 na tayo. Do we proceed? Descriptive statistics. So descriptive statistics, normally sa stat, ano ba yan? Stat 201 ba yun? Mga mean median mode? O kung ano mang subject siya. Yun yung mga mean median mode. But normally, when it's discussed in class, it's divided into several classifications. So measures of central tendency, measures of variation, measures of skewness, measures of kurtosis, measures of position or location. So 5 categories. Let's discuss them one by one. So first of all, summary measures such as the ones I've mentioned, they're for quantitative variables mostly. Bakit? Because they involve computations, right? They involve measurements. That's why they can be computed only for quantitative variables. Hindi naman ako pwedeng kumuha ng average. Anong average ng sex? Ewan ko. Diba? So it's gonna be for quantitative variables. So let's divide them into several classifications. Dito na lang natin gawin. So measures of central tendency. Sige, meron siyang mean, median, mode. Sige, to be honest, ito ba? Do you remember these or have you forgotten it? Kamusta ang recall nyo dito? Habang sinusulat ko, pakisagot naman ako.
Sir, mean would be the average of the...
And kahit hindi mo naman discuss lahat, but
Okay.
kamusta lang generally yung class?
Okay, I think I do. I remember.
You remember it? Oh, the rest, just curious. Ito ba ay ano na? Redundant na dinidiscuss ko pa, or is it something you don't remember? Medyo vague na ba?
Naalala pa naman, sir.
Alala pa naman. Okay. Yung iba?
Skewness is kind of vague.
Okay, sige.
I just remember the kurtosis.
Actually, ayoko discuss yung kurtosis eh. Pero go lang. Aha. Sige. So, okay na yun yung mga sagot nyo. Kaya ko rin natatanong kasi if you're a bit iffy dito sa concepts nito, I can send you something I've used for my other classes. So basically, as a summary lang, summary of how to compute them, summary of how are they used. I'll be posting it na lang. I'll be posting a material dun sa Canvas natin. But for today, we're just gonna discuss how do we compute them using Excel. See, we're using Excel right now. The assumption is we already know that these are measures we can get from quantitative data, from quantitative variables. How do we compute them? So sa Excel, meron siyang functions na tinatawag. So yung functions, ginagamit na natin siya kanina. A function starts by the equal sign, calling an equal sign. Then if you type any function, let's say I want to take the average, and it has suggestions, and it has descriptions as well. So returns the average of the absolute deviations. I don't want that. I want to get the average. So I just press tab. Then yan. The format is equal sign, call the function, and then inside the parentheses, you input the parameters. And that's uniform for all functions. So the average for all these heights is gonna be 166.8. So from our sheet dito, 166.8. Mean is kind of self-explanatory. You've been exposed to it ever since you were children, right? Sa mga grades ninyo, weighted average lagi. What about the median? So the median is the middle observation when the data is arranged either ascending or descending. So apparently it's 165. And then the mode, it's going to be the most frequently occurring value. So it's 170 apparently. Tangkad nyo naman, 170 mode. Alright, so what's the difference between these three? They are all measures of center. What's the central value in our data set? If I'm going to summarize the height of the whole section, what number am I going to use? So it's either of these three. So what's the difference between them? Sige nga, recall muna tayo. What's the difference between mean, median, and mode? When do you use which?
Mean for the average.
Mean is the average.
Median for the middle number. Then mode for the most frequent number.
Yeah, that's the definition of mean, median, and mode. But if I'm gonna choose one number among them, what's it gonna be? Or what do I have to think about?
For what's the goal again?
To give one number that summarizes or gives the true center of the variable for height, true central value for height.
That's the mean.
Sige na. Sorry. Medyo recap din kasi ito nung mga stat subjects nyo dati. So basically kasi these are used in different contexts din kasi. So baka hindi masyadong na-emphasize from your previous stat subjects, but these are all valid measures, all right? And whoever answered, you're correct. This is the average, this is the middle, this is the most frequently occurring value. They're all measures of central tendency. They all provide a measure of the center. However, in different contexts, mas okay gamitin si mean, mas okay gamitin si median, mas okay gamitin si mode. All right? Of course, you can just provide them all, just like what we did, but there are some cases where it's appropriate to use one over the other. So one particular example will be when there are outliers. So let's say I have sections A and B. Data sets A and B. Sure. Yung nag-chat sa akin. Okay. So let's go. So kunwari heights, grades na lang natin ito. So 80, 80, 80, 80. Ito ay 80, 80, 80, 100. So what's the true center or what's the true central value that describes the data set? So if I get the average for this, it's 80. If I get the median, it's gonna be 80 as well. I just copy this sa baba. Ito yung average. Ito yung median. Alright. So actually, when you have outliers, when you have unusually high or unusually low observations, the average is nahihila. It's getting pulled upward or downwards. So the average is quite sensitive to outliers. So it's better to use the median in this case. So yun actually yung question ko lang naman. So what about the mode? What's the advantage of the mode? So the mode is the only summary measure, at least that I know of, that you can use for qualitative variables. So let's say I ask, what mode of transportation are you using to go to school? Tagal nang hindi nagta-transportation. What transpo? Kunwari, ang answers are, ano ba yun? Own car. Puro own car sa Lasal eh. Kunwari, ito yung dataset natin. Bus, train, walking. Actually, marami rin yung walking kasi naka-condo. Bus, train. So may mode yan. Kasi we define the mode as the most frequently occurring value. So it's gonna be own car, right? So yun. Advantages of one over the other. Of course, again, you can present them everything, but it's caution lang, the mean is quite prone to outliers, sensitive to outliers, and then the mode, it has an advantage of being used for qualitative variables. So sige, yun na yun. So what about measures of variation? As the name suggests, they measure, of course, variation. Gaano ka kalat-kalat, gaano ka dikit-dikit yung mga values. So we have these four. So the range is just the maximum value minus the minimum value. So actually, if you're gonna compute for the range, walang range na function si Excel eh. So wala. So we have to use the maximum. So the maximum value, it's 185 minus the minimum. And kita naman, ito yung formula. Minus the minimum from this dataset as well. So you're gonna have 33. That's the range. Maximum minus minimum. So range 33. The variance, actually magkaiba pa ang sample variance and population variance. So considering this is just a sample of students, we use the function var. So var, and that's the variance. Gawin natin paste as value. This is the variance. If you want to recall paano siya kino-compute manually, yung idea niya, doon na lang sa isasend ko. Di na kasi siya part ni STT203. But the standard deviation is just the square root of the variance. So SQRT yung function. We have this. Coefficient of variation is just standard deviation over the mean. So yan sila. So I just want to clean this to decimal places. And I want to express this as percentages, as a percentage pala. So ano naman pinagkaiba nito? Lahat sila measures of variation. That's one thing common about them. But what can we say about each? So first, the range is the simplest to calculate. It's just maximum minus minimum. The problem is it's quite sensitive to the values at the middle of the data set, or rather, it doesn't acknowledge the middle value in the data set. Suppose we have A and B ulit, test scores ulit. 60, 80, 80, 80, 100. Ito 80, 80, 80, 80, 80. So the range will be max minus minimum. 40 para dito, range. For here, it's gonna be 0. 80 minus 80, di ba? But is it really that big yung difference between sections A and B? Hindi naman masyado, di ba? the middle observations are actually exactly the same. So that's the disadvantage of using the range. Doesn't take into account the middle observations. So the variance is actually parang square distance from the mean. Average square distance from the mean. So you have a reference point, the mean, 166.8. Kunin ko lahat ng distance ng observations ko from the mean. And then I square the distance. I take the average. So one disadvantage of the variance is it's in centimeters squared. cm squared yan, ha? cm kasi lahat ito. cm, since square root ng variance standard deviation is gonna be in square centimeters. It's gonna be in centimeters as well. Yun naman advantage in standard deviation. Doesn't have the disadvantage of the range. It takes into account all values and it's expressed as centimeters, not centimeters squared. So why do we have to compute for coefficient of variation din naman? So that's tawag dito? Standard deviation over the mean. We're canceling the unit basically. So this is a unitless measure which we can use to compare between two different variables. So let's say we have height, we have weight. Ito ay cm, ito ay kg. Yung sakto pala tapos natin din. Tapos tayo ng 4. So kunwari I have sige, mag-random ako. Random. So I'm generating random numbers between 160 to 180. So, maaari ganyan. Wait lang, ha? Tapos yung weight, ano ba magandang weight na range natin? Random between 50 kilos to 100 kilos. So, okay. So what if we computed for the standard deviation? So STDev yung function para hindi nyo na kailangan square root. STDev for height, STDev for weight. Tama ba to? Tama siya. Tingin ng mga aso namin. Okay, so yan. So ito yung standard deviation for both. It's gonna be in centimeters nga lang centimeters yung kay height, kilograms yung kay weight. So they cannot be compared as is kasi magkaiba sila ng units. So that's why we use CV, coefficient of variation. It's a unitless measure used to compare variation between two or more variables of different measures. So okay. So guys, any questions so far? Ayos pa?
Okay pa naman, sir.
Okay, buti naman. Dinadaanan lang natin lahat. Pagdating natin dun sa mga R, sa mga SAS, hopefully ito is parang second nature na, ha. So if I give you an objective like compare the distributions of the weights of males and females, you know that it's a box plot. Parang ganun naman yung goal natin, di ba? Or you know what to give, anong kailangan ko na numbers. So besides box plots, I can present them the mean for males, the mean for females, di ba? So yun, next, coefficient of skewness. Coefficient of skewness is basically a measure of symmetry. So coefficient of skewness, it can be less than 0, negative. Pwedeng 0 siya, pwedeng greater than 0. Actually, i-search ko na lang sa internet para mayroong tayo, skewness. Mas maganda pag nandito eh. Skewness illustration. Yan. Bang. So ito yung itsura ng skewness. So basically, if you have a skewness of 0, it's gonna be a symmetric distribution. Left and right symmetric. Alright. Then next, tawag dito? Positively skewed distributions or right skewed, they are distributions where there are unusually high values. What do you mean by that? Let's say yung test scores natin, 80 tayo lahat. Sino bang dito? Sinong pwedeng volunteer dito? Ayan, Alain. Ikaw ay, hindi kita tatawagin ha. Kunwari ikaw ay 100, lahat kami 80. Unusually high value ka, di ba? Hila mo yung klase natin pataas. So that's a skewed distribution. You're skewing the distribution to the right. So those are positively skewed distributions. On the other hand, negatively skewed, baliktad. Kunwari 80 kayo lahat, 0 ako. O di negatively skewed tayo. Hila ko kayo pababa. I'm pulling you downward. Pulling you to the left. So, all right. So, that's it. Let's compute for the skewness. Skewness of height. How skewed is height? So, it has a function skew. However, if you're a very curious na student, maraming formula for skewness. Excel uses some form of skewness na hindi ko ma-figure out kung ano yung formula. But there's a lot of formulas for computing skewness. But the interpretation, it's still the same. So, ang skewness natin, 0.4. So, kung 0.4 yan, ibig sabihin positively skewed. Pag positively skewed, it means there are unusually high values. Pero medyo symmetric yung distribution natin. It's the distribution is approximately symmetric or close to symmetric, but there are unusually tall students. And I think si 6'1" person is the one pulling us up. And so 185 siya, the next is 180 na. And so unusually tall ka. Sana akin na lang height mo para magaling ako mag-basketball. So yun. So all right, kuha siya. Si coefficient of skewness. Ganun lang naman siya. Then lastly, percentiles. Yung kurtosis kasi bukod sa for this part hindi nyo naman masyadong magagamit. Ano rin eh. May debate pa on how it's defined. I don't want to go into it. So percentiles last na, these are expressed as let's say P70 or P90, 90th percentile, 5th percentile, 50th percentile. It's basically kunwari piece of 90, 90th percentile. What's the score that that's the cutoff for the top 10%? Diba? 90% of all values are below it. So what's that value? So Excel uses another formula. Iba sa mga ginagamit namin sa klase, but it's the same idea. So percentile, let's say yan, equal percentile. Ano ba maganda dyan? Kahit alin, percentile in, percentile x, bahala kayo, kahit alin muna. We highlight the data set. Then the next parameter is k. Whatever percentile, 90th, 80th, I want the 90th, 0.9. So we have 178.2. So that's the cutoff. To be part of the top 10% ng class sa height, you should have a height of 178.2 centimeters. So 178.2. So let's say, ano yung gitna? What's the middle? So 0.5, 50% is above you, 50% is below you, 165. And it's exactly the same as the median. Bakit? Because it's the same idea. What's the score that cuts off the bottom 50% and the top 50%? It's gonna be 165, the median, right? So yun lang, ito lang yung summary measures natin. We can do it using individual Excel functions, and then just to finish the meeting, we also have this tawag dito, this feature in Excel. So if you're following, click on the data tab. Okay, data tab, and then data analysis. Yari. Sorry. So data analysis. Meron ba kayong data analysis? May lumalabas? Do you have that button?
Meron po.
Yun. O di maigi. And descriptive statistics. Asina dyan. Wala po sa web version. Ayun, yun lang. Wala sa web version. Hindi pa naman kailangan, but yeah, this is one shortcut. One of the ways you can do it. So input range, height. Check mo ha, kasi parang may free Microsoft 365 si Lasal. So hindi kailangan mag-web kung gusto mo. So labels first, so summary statistics. Sige, lagay natin yan. Lahat. Uy, nangyari. Shade smallest. Okay. Ayan. So we have the summary measures na agad. So we don't need to do them all manually. Nandiyan na lahat. Skewness, kurtosis, variance, standard deviation, mean, median, mode, minimum, maximum, sum, count, nandiyan lahat. So, alright, if wala namang questions.
Sir, ano yung napindot niyo po dyan?
Ano?
Sa data analysis? Which one did you click?
Sige, data analysis, descriptive stat.
Oh, okay, okay.
Tapos just highlight the cells. For height yung sinasummarize natin. You're free to check whatever you want. Then you have this. Sige, so yun. Wait.